Are you ready to learn Python and make a cool little guessing game in the process? Came in the right place. Let's get started. Today we're going to jump into Python, learn some basic concepts, and make a guess the number game. If you have any questions about who I am, check out my videos on my YouTube channel. I have a lot of videos on reverse engineering of malware. According to Berkeley.edu, Python is the second most in-demand language of 2021. A lot of big companies use Python in their backbone to include Netflix, Google, and Facebook to name a few. A lot of the reverse engineering environments also have Python available to the reverse engineers, programs like Ghidra. The idea is to be able to learn Python and get to the point where we're going to make a guess the number game. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you are as well. So let's quit talking about it. Let's get to it. So I know you're eager to get started, but before we do, let's look at the end goal. The game is going to look something like this. It's going to ask, what is your guess, 1 through 10? The player is going to guess a number. I'm going to guess 5. It says it's too high, only 2 guesses remaining. I'm going to guess 3. Too low, only 1 guess remaining, so I'm going to guess 4. I win. Do I want to play again? Of course I do. Let's go ahead and get it wrong this time. See what it says when I get it wrong. I'm going to guess 5. Too low. So I should probably go up, but I'm going to purposely get it wrong. So I'm going to go lower. Too low, 1 guess remaining. Too low, game over. Do you want to play again? No. So this is the end state of what we want to achieve in this series. So they get 3 guesses. If they get the guess right in between those 3, the game is over. It says you win, and then ask if you want to play again. But if they make those 3 guesses wrong, then at the very end it's going to say game over. Do you want to play again? That is the goal in this series. Before we get started writing any code, we're going to need to download Python and download PyCharm from JetBrains as our Python editor. So go ahead and pull up an internet browser. I'm using Microsoft Edge. You can use Google Chrome. You can use Firefox if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and do a search for python.org. Since I typed it in correctly, it went straight to the web page. And since I'm a Windows user, I'm going to go to this Windows submenu and download Python 3.9.5. macOS, use the macOS submenu. Linux, use the other platform submenu. Alright, it's asking me to save down here. I'm going to click save, and then I'm going to click run. Chrome and Firefox might do it a little bit differently. Alright, now that that is done, I am going to click install now. Alright, once I click install now, this UAC pop-up is going to pop up. I'm going to click yes. Okay, now that is done, we can disable path length limit if we want to. I don't have any need or reason to, so I'm going to close. But now that is done, we can move on to the Python editor, in which we're going to be using JetBrains' PyCharm. So once again, let's open up our Internet Explorer on Microsoft Edge, Chrome, Firefox. Then we're going to go to JetBrains.com. Just like it sounds, the word jet, the word brains.com. Alright, since we get into JetBrains, I'm going to exit out of this cookie and IP address notification. I'm going to hover above Developer Tools. I'm going to click on PyCharm in the second column. I'm going to click the download button in the center of the screen. I'm going to select the black download button for Community. Then at the bottom of the page, it pops up. I'm going to click Save and Run. If it doesn't pop up on the bottom of the screen like mine did, you can use the direct link. And once it's fully downloaded, we're going to click Run and get into it. Okay, it's downloaded. We're going to click on Run. It's going to pop up with the user account control notification again. We're going to click Yes. Once again, I'm going to close out of my web browser. I'm going to click next through the prompts. There's nothing you really need to change here. Everything is pretty self-explanatory, so you just hit next and install. And then once it's fully installed, we'll continue on. Now that PyCharm is installed, we're going to go ahead and click on Run PyCharm Community Edition. All right, let's go ahead and confirm that we have read the agreement. I am not going to send any anonymous statistics. You can if you want to. I'm not going. Okay, once we get here, we're going to click on New Project. And then up here at the very top, we're going to name this guessing game. Okay. Then once we name it guessing game, we're going to go to the bottom and click on create. They have some pretty cool tips. I'm going to go ahead and click do not show tips, but I do suggest that you allow the tips to keep on running and see what new cool tips show up every once in a while. They got a really good library of tips. Okay, it is currently creating the virtual environment, getting ready for us to use it. Here we go. And the way that I set it up with a little simple Python script, kind of get you going. I'm going to go ahead and click got it on the code with me. I'm going to go ahead and click do not show again on this notification down here in the bottom right. Then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all this code right here. Then I'm going to get rid of this breakpoint. So now we have a perfectly clean slate to start off with. So Python is really simple. I'm going to do something really simple just to verify that everything was set up properly. We're going to do the world famous hello world. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to give ourselves a little bit more real estate for our code. So right up here in this project pane, there's a little minus menu. I'm going to go ahead and click that, and I'm going to have it shift off a little bit to hide it so we have a little bit more room to code. And then I'm going to go ahead and type in print, because that's what we want to do. We want to print hello world. I'm going to do an open parentheses, open quotation mark, and I'm going to write hello world, exclamation mark. And then Python really likes having an enter space after the last sentence of your program. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter so we can get on the line 3. So this in essence is going to be your very first Python program. Let's go ahead and run it by clicking this little green run arrow up at the top right hand side of your screen. Once we do that, the interpreter console loads on the bottom, and we can see that hello world is printed right there. So we've installed Python 3.9.5, and we've installed PyCharm from JetBrains. So we have a fully functional Python development environment ready to go. So now that we've ran our hello world, let's go and look at what else we can print using variables. Using variables is an easy way to assign a name, a string, a number, a value to a location, a memory location that can be used over and over and over again. It can be changed relatively easy. This will allow you to be able to put that into your code, use it often, make it easier for you to code. So let's try something different with our hello world. Instead of saying hello world, let's say hello Jack. We can do that just by saying hello Jack. That's pretty easy. We hit play. It says hello Jack, but let's do that with a variable. So we're going to create a variable called first name. And then the first name, we're going to make it equal to Jack. So now what we can do is instead of saying print hello Jack, we can say print just hello with a space. And then after that, we can print the variable first name. And you're going to see that this is going to perform the exact same thing. It says, hello, Jack, down here. So something else that we can do is we can also add a last name. So let's do last name. Let's call him Jack Stock. So we can also do that, saying hello and the first name. And then we can do the last name. And you're going to notice something kind of interesting here when we run it. It is going to say, hello, Jack Stock, with no space in between. Once again, if we look at these variables, there is no space in these variables. So it's going to put them just like that. It's going to concatenate them just as is. So if we want a space, we're going to have to add a quotation mark, the space, and then an end quotation mark. And then we have to add the variable in there. So now we can run it. Now we'll get hello Jack Stock. Very cool. So that is a way that we get to say hello and then put in variables to stay in place of those names. And we can change this very easily. So if we were to have a lot of these, instead of going through each one of them and naming them Billy or George, what we can do is still keep it first name. We can change it up here. We can make it Sarah. And we can make it Sarah Bean. Sounds like a great name. Now we can run it. Now they've all changed to Sarah Bean. So let's play around with this for a little bit more. Let's go and get rid of these. So we have hello, first name, and last name. Let's go ahead and change it up a little bit. Let's say, hello, my name is, and then let's close that with a quotation mark and add in first name. And then let's go ahead and say, hello, my name is that, the space, of course, and my last. And then in Python, once you get too far, you can hit enter and keep on going. I'm going to take this and bring it over here. So I got in my last, I put a space after that, and then a plus down here, and then I'm going to keep on going with my string. And my last name is space there, plus I'm going to write in a last name here. And then I'm going to do something for age. So let's go ahead and write in, and I'm going to do space, and I am, and then we're going to do plus age. So when I type in plus age at the end, you see that it has a red squiggly line underneath it because we don't have an age up here. So for now, let's go ahead and put 19. Let's get rid of this age. Let's see if we can run it just like that. All right, so here we go. This line up here, hello Sarah Bean, is what we have up here. And the second line, hello, my name is Sarah. My last name is Bean, and I am 19. That is this down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this 19 into a variable. So we're going to do age equals 19. And then where it says I am 19, we're going to go ahead and get rid of that 19, add plus age. Let's go ahead and run it again. Hello, my name is Sarah, and my last name is Bean, and I am 19. Awesome. So, of course, we can change it. We can change it to Joe Dragon, who is 109 years old. So instead of changing this to Joe, this to Dragon, this to Joe, this to Dragon, and this to 109, we get to do it really easily and quickly up here and run it just like that. Now let's go and add in one more just to show. Let's say I have a friend who is, and then we're going to do age here, who is named, and then I'm going to hit enter there. I'm going to do the plus, I'm going to put first name. And his surname, is, and they're going to do plus last name. Now, if you saw, when I typed in last, it gave me the chance to auto-populate. So I can either use my mouse and click last name, or as I'm typing last, if that is the one that I want, I can hit tab and it will automatically populate it. So let's go ahead and see what we have here. I have a friend who is 109 who is named Joe and his surname is Dragon. And then very easily we can change it to something else. Billy John, who is 65. And that is the awesomeness that is variables. Very easy to change, and it goes throughout your entire code with minimal work from the developer. So now that we looked at variables and we know how to use them now, let's take a look at some of the cool things we can do with strings, namely the new line character and escape characters. So I'm going to go ahead and take these first two print statements, and let's go ahead and delete them. Let's clean it up a little bit. So now I just have this last print statement. Let's go ahead and run it and see what we have. So I have a friend who is 65, who is named Billy, and his surname is John. But if you see, I have to scroll this scroll bar down here to see it all. That doesn't look very professional. So what I want to do is I want to break them into 3 separate lines. One line that says, I have a friend who is 65, who is named Billy, and his surname is John. So let's go ahead and do that. So first off, let's do it in the code itself just to make it look a little bit more readable. So I have a friend who is plus age. I'm going to hit enter right after this plus, and it's going to move it down to the next line. Who is named, and I have first name down here. I'm going to bring that back up to this line just by hitting delete a couple times. There we go. So I have a friend who is age and who is named first name, and his surname is last name. So this is how I have it written in code, but I want it to show up down here in my console the same way. Let's go ahead and hit play, see if that works. When we hit play, it is still all on the same line because it is still one print statement. But what we can do is every time that we have a new line, we can do a new line character. So we're going to do a backward slash in for new line. Then we're also going to do it to this one as well. So what that's going to do is it's going to print, I have a friend who is age, and then when it sees this new line character inside of the quotation marks, it is going to move it to a new line, and then it's going to continue to write everything else. And then once again, new line, write everything else. Let's see how this looks now. I have a friend who is 65, who is named Billy, and his surname is John. Now we can see that it's kind of offset a little bit because now that we put on a new line, we don't really need this space in there anymore. Let's go ahead and move that space. Then let's go ahead and run it. There we go. I have a friend who is 65, who is named Billy, and his surname is John. That looks amazing. All right, so now that we have that, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to delete all this for the time now so we can look at something else. I'm going to use hello world to pretty much demonstrate the same thing. So we can do hello, and then we can do backwards in world. So looking at what we had earlier with Billy John, who was 65 on 3 different lines, when we look at this and we see that new line character, you would expect that it shows up on 2 different lines. Let's see. And you're absolutely right. It does show up on 2 different lines. Hello, and then world. So the backwards in is the escape character for a new line, in which this backwards slash is the escape character, and whatever follows it is pretty much the instruction on what to do. So what if we wanted to have hello world with a backwards slash right there? So Python has gotten pretty smart. You can run this as is, and Python will recognize that even though it's a backwards slash and it's supposed to have a command or something after it, Python 3 has gotten pretty smart and it understands what you're trying to do. So, it is smart, it knows what you're trying to do, but what if we were to give it something a little bit more complex? Let's say a file structure inside of Windows. So let's go C colon backslash. See, it's already showing up orange. It's expecting me to write in something like N or R, which is return, which will bring it back to the beginning of the line. But I don't want to do that. I'm just pretending that we are looking at a file system inside of Windows. So let's go with users. Let's go with Jack, and let's go desktop. So what I expect to see here is it printing out exactly this, because we just did hello world with a slash, and there was no issue, correct? Let's go ahead and run it. Once we run it, we get errors everywhere. It does not understand this escape Unicode. It even says it right here. This is the Unicode escape. So it does not understand what we're trying to do. So in order to get the slashes to appear like we want to, we have to use that escape character, which so happens to be the exact same slash that we've been using. So we're going to do a slash 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 and a slash slash. Now let's run it and see what we get. Now we get it looking like just how we want it to look. So this escape character is asking for us to show what is next in line, and which in this case is the slash. So a couple other things that we can do is we can see what the length of this string is. So let's go ahead and look at how long the length is. So we're looking at everything from C all the way to the very end of desktop. So we can count 1, 2, 3. This actually counts 4, 5, 6. We can go all the way down and do all this counting. Or we can let Python do it for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this print statement. I'm going to get rid of the close parentheses on the end, and then I'm going to assign this a variable. I'm going to call this location equals C users Jack desktop. I'm going to have Python do it for me, in which I'm going to ask for it to find out what the length is by using the length function of that location string. So if everything goes well, we should hit this play button, and it's going to tell us that the length of this string is 21. You can do a lot of great and awesome things with strings in Python. So now that we have an idea of how to use strings in Python, the next logical step would be to look at numbers. So let's go ahead and delete this for the time being. Then I'm going to make a new parameter called myNumber, or myNum. And I'm going to make that 34. So what we can do is we can do a print of myNumber. Then we can see that being printed. So I'm going to run that, and we see that it shows up as 34 here. But now the big thing is that even though I wrote 34 as a number, this 34 is still in quotation marks. This, in essence, even though it is a number, this is a string. This is a sentence. And this is being printed out the same way that everything else has been printed out so far, just like a string. Likewise, if I were to get rid of these quotation marks and run it, we'll see that down here it shows us the exact same thing. But if I want to say something along the lines of my age is, then close that quotation mark, and then plus my number, if we were to run that, we would see that it runs into an error, saying that it cannot concatenate the string that is not an int to a string. Moral of the story is this saying that it cannot concatenate this string with an actual integer number. What it would have to be is it would have to be another string. Let's go and put quotation marks around that and run it again. Now we see that these two strings concatenate perfectly, and now it says my age is 34. So if you want to have the number in there, you're going to have to convert it to a string. So you can either do it this way, or you can have it as its actual integer number. Then you can do something of a cast or a translation, which we're translating it to a string, in which it is going to be this variable of my number that we want to turn into a string. So in essence, this is more or less putting those quotations around my number. So now let's run it. Now it says my age is 34, which is perfect, which is exactly what we wanted to see. We can also use these numbers to do some simple math. So I'm going to get rid of everything inside of my print statement. Then I'm going to do a simple math problem of 2 plus 2, which is going to come out to 4. Then what I'm also going to do is let's go ahead and multiply that by 4. Once we run it, we get 10. Because of the way of order operations works, it is going to do this 4 times 2 first, and then it is going to add 2. So we are looking at 8 plus 2. If we wanted to change that up, we could use parentheses. So let's put a parentheses over here and a parentheses over here. So now, in essence, we are going to try to have 4 times 4, which is going to be 16. If we wanted to go even further, we could do 4 times 4 here. We could put those in their own parentheses and then run that. Now we have 64. Our game is not going to be very fun if we don't allow the user to give in their input so they can guess the number. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can get that input. And we're going to do that by asking the user right now what their first name is. So we're going to go ahead and delete what we have right now, and we're merely going to do an input line. And this is going to wait on the command prompt for the user to input something. Anything, really. So we are going to display the text, please enter your first name. Okay, and then in good Python, I'm going to hit enter and have that second line. So that way the green squiggly disappears. Let's go ahead and run this and see what we have. So we're running it, and down here we see it says please enter your first name. Let's click down here and let's type in our first name. Okay, we type in our name, we hit enter. We have succeeded. We have received input. We haven't done anything with the input just yet. But there is one thing that I want to correct before we even get that far. I want to make this portion look a little bit better. So I want to put a semicolon here, and then I'm also going to put a space to kind of give that distance so the user knows that's where they're supposed to put in their name. Let's go ahead and run this again. And now this looks a little bit better, a little bit more professional. All right, so we can enter our first name, but we're not doing anything with that just yet. We need to store this name inside of a variable. So let's go ahead and bring back the first name variable that we had earlier. So we're going to type in first name, and then we're going to go ahead and reassign it to Billy. Sounds good. And then let's go ahead and print hello first name. Okay, so we have first name of Billy up here, and then we're asking the user to put in their first name. Then it's going to print the first name. What are we expecting to see here? Let's go ahead and find out. Enter your first name. First name's Jack. It still says hello Billy because Billy was written up here and it never got changed. So when we say hello, we're still going to say Billy because it does not know that the word Jack was ever inputted here. So let's go ahead and take this, and we're going to write in first name right here before the input. They're going to make the first name variable change to whatever is being inputted here. So now when we look at first name, it should not be Billy. So let's go ahead and run it. Please enter your first name. Let's go with Jack again. Hello, Jack. That's exactly what we wanted to see. So that is how we are going to retrieve the input from the user. So let's go ahead and take this a little bit further. Let's go ahead and do first name and last name. So let's go ahead and do another one. we're just going to do this last name. And we're going to go ahead and set it as, let's just set it for blank. So that way, we allow the user to put something in. So we're pretty much going to replicate this, but we're going to do it for last name. Last name equals input, and then please enter your last name. We're going to do a colon, space. Then down here where it says hello, we're going to do hello, first name. And then we are going to want to have that space in between the first name and the last name. Hello, first name, space, last name. Okay. Then let's go ahead and run this. So please enter your first name, Jack. Please enter your last name, Be Nimble. All right, so hello, Jack, be nimble. Awesome. So this is how we are going to receive input during our game. But instead of asking their first name and their last name, we're going to ask them to guess a number between 1 through 10. So there are a lot of ways to make a guess the number game. But for this guess the number game, I want to use a function. So we're briefly going to go over functions and how functions work. So I'm going to delete what we currently have here. And we're going to do another cool little experiment with functions. So I'm going to create a function. In order to create a function, we need to do a definition. We are defining the name of the function and the parameter of the function. So I'm going to define this function, which I am going to call it print party. All right, we're going to go ahead and do an open parentheses and a closed parentheses with nothing in between. So you can identify a function because of the fact that it has the name with the parentheses after it. Earlier, if you remember, we actually used a function in which we used print, which is a function, and then we also used the function length, which also had those parentheses, in which we did a length. We tried to find out the length of a string that was called location. So we did that earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and click undo a few times by Control Z. We're going to get back to the definition of party. So last time we used a function, this time we're going to create a function. So we are going to define this function as the name print party. And then after our open and close parentheses, we're going to do a colon. Now when I hit enter, it's automatically going to indent me. Anything that is indented underneath this function is going to be recognized to be a part of that function. It's only going to be performed or executed when that function is called. And I'll show you what it means to call a function here soon. So what I want is that every time someone calls this function in the code, it prints party on. So we're going to write in print, open parentheses, quotation, party on, exclamation mark. Very cool. So if you look at these green squiggly lines, hover above them, it will tell you what it believes the problem is, in which after a function, Python likes to have 2 spaces after a function. Let's see. It believes that there is still some spaces here, so let's go ahead and get rid of those spaces. And those spaces. There you go. Python likes to have 1 empty line at the end of the program. So let's go ahead and hit play. Let's see what happens. Nothing happened here. If you look, there is nothing, because even though we have that function set up and ready to go, we're never calling that function. So we're going to come down here and we're going to call that function. We're going to call it just by pretty much just putting its name and putting those open and closed parentheses. This is what we mean by calling a function. We need to have 2 spaces in between the end of, we need to have 2 lines in between the end of the function and the beginning of anything else that we write. So if you see, this function is indented, and anything after the function that is also indented will still be part of that function. Then once you're out of that function and you have your 2 empty empty lines afterwards, then this is indented back to the left or unindented, and this is going to be more or less where our main function, our main program is going to be initialized, and we place that. So now when we run this, it's going to say party on, party on, party on, party on, because we've called this function, and it is going through party on 4 different times. And to get an idea of exactly what happens in this function and when it gets executed, we're going to go ahead and do another print statement in which we're going to say before party function. And then I'm going to take this exact print statement, I'm going to copy and paste it down here, and I'm going to put after party function. Okay, and then let's see, it wants to have 2 blank lines after this. So let's hit enter there. And then of course here it's saying that we want 1 blank line at the end. So now there's 1 blank line at the end of the file. So let's run and see what we have. So if we look, we'll see that it has this before party function text, and then it calls print party, in which it does is 4 party ons. And then we have the after party function. And then what we can do is we can make this function a little bit smarter. What we're going to do is we are going to allow this party to accept a parameter in which we want to have the parameter of a name to be passed. So what we're looking at is it is going to bring in a name from the outside, in which we'll be sending it when we call that function. Then it is going to say party on, then we're going to have a space, and then we're going to put the name. Then we're going to go ahead and put back that exclamation mark at the end of the sentence. So now every time that we call party, we're going to require that the developer sends it a name, or the user sends it a name. Then it's going to say party on whatever that name is. But right now we don't have any names. There is no Jack or Jill or anywhere inside of here. We have to pass it through this print party caller. So we're going to call print party with the parameter of Wayne. And then I'm going to copy this and we're going to make another one. And then I'm going to change the name from Wayne to Garth. So if all goes well, it's going to call print party twice. First one with the name Wayne. Wayne's going to go in here. It's going to say party on Wayne. And then it's going to do it again. It's going to do the print party with Garth. Garth is going to come in here to name as a parameter. It's going to say party on Garth. Let's see what we have. All right, before party function, print party with Wayne. It says party on Wayne. And then it says party on Garth, and then here's the after party function. Functions are amazing in Python. So now that we have functions taken care of, a guessing game is nothing if you can't tell the user if they've guessed correctly. So what we're looking at is saying, if the answer is correct, then you win. But if the answer is wrong, you lose. So that's what we're going to work on now. We're going to work on that if statement. So I'm going to go ahead and take everything here. I'm going to go ahead and delete it for the time being. Then we're going to do a little if else statement about, let's say, the weather. So it's going to make a variable called sunny. And let's say that it is sunny. Let's say that it is true that it's sunny. What you see here is a Boolean value, in which there's only 2 options. It's either true or false. So far we've looked at strings, then integers. Now we're looking at Boolean values. So we're going to say sunny equals true. Yes, but let's also say that it's not so clear. There's a lot of clouds in the sky. And even though, the sun is coming through, there's enough clouds to kind of make you worried about the future. So clear is going to be false for now. All right, well, let's go to make an if statement. Let's say if it is sunny, let's go outside. So we're just going to type in if, then we're going to write in sunny, and then we're going to use a colon. So this is very simple, saying if Sunny is true, then we're going to do something. If it were false, then it doesn't really work out that well. If Sunny is not Sunny because it's false. So if Sunny is true, or in this case, if it is Sunny, we're going to go print, go for a walk. Seems simple enough, right? So let's go ahead and run this, see what it says. Once we click play, we get go for a walk because it's sunny. Let's go ahead and take this false here. We're going to copy that with Control C. Come up here to true, double click, and then Control V. Let's go ahead and make it not sunny. Let's hit play, see what happens. Once we do that, we see that it says absolutely nothing because it's not sunny. So let's go ahead and add something there. So I could say, else if, but it's either going to be sunny true or sunny false. It's either sunny or not sunny. And at this point of our lives, there's nothing in between. So instead of saying else if, we're just going to say else, because if anything else, they're going to do something else. Let's go ahead and do print, and let's say, stay inside and play Xbox. That sounds reasonable. All right, now let's hit play. All right, so sunny is indeed false, so we're falling into this else statement that says stay inside and play Xbox. So that is exactly what we're going to do. But now, what if it were sunny? Let's change this back to true. But it was cloudy, enough clouds to kind of make you, cautious about the future. Well, let's go ahead and go for a walk anyways, but let's take an umbrella. So here I'm going to write else if. But in Python, you don't really say else if like that. You write an EL for else and then IF for if. So else if, we do our colons, we hit enter. Let's say print, take an umbrella just in case. Okay, so I'm going to head it in else if, but I didn't exactly tell it else if what. So it doesn't exactly know what we're asking. So let's go and say, else if it is sunny and not clear. So this and not is a way of saying false. So if sunny is true and clear is false. Then while we're at it, let's go ahead and make this one. If it is sunny and it's clear, then go for a walk. All right, so sunny and clear, go for a walk. Sunny but not clear, take an umbrella. Then if it's not sunny and not clear, aka everything else, then just stay inside and play Xbox. Let's give it a spin. Let's see what we have. All right, it says take an umbrella just in case. All right, let's change them both back to true. It wants us to go for a walk. And what if they were both false? Stay inside and play Xbox. So this is the key component to our guessing game. So now that we have our if statement set up, letting the user know whether they got the answer correct or not, we want to go one step further. We want to let the user know if the number they chose is too high or too low. And we're going to do that with comparisons. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of what we have here for now. And we're going to go ahead and create a couple number variables. Let's go with number 2 and then number 5. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to compare these numbers to see which one is greater and which one is lesser than the other number. So let us go ahead and let's do an if statement, much like we saw in the last chapter. So we're going to do an if statement, but we're not going to do if sunny, nothing like that. What we're going to do is we are going to see if number 1 is less than number 2. So we're going to type in if number 1, and then the less than sign, number 2. So in this case, if we look at it, number 1 is actually the number 2. And then this number is the number 5. So in essence, we have, 2 and 5 here. That's going to read, that is a true statement. 2 is going to be absolutely less than 5. So I'm going to go ahead and click undo with my Control Z. So now that we know that that is true, we are going to tell it what to do when it determines that is true. So we are going to do print. We're going to say num1 is smaller than num2. Let's go ahead and run that real quick to make sure that the logic is sound. We run that and we do see that num1 is absolutely smaller than num2. Subsequently, if by some crazy reason number 2 is bigger, we're going to make an if statement that's going to cover that. And right here, I'm going to write else if. Then I'm going to write in, my apologies, not else if, spelled ELIF. Else if, let's say number 1 was bigger than number 2. What would we do? Well, we would go ahead and print number 1 is bigger than number 2. So now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and run it and make sure that is going to tell us that number 1 is smaller. Let's see. Number 1 is still smaller, and if you see, this was not printed out because number 1 is not bigger than number 2. So let's go ahead and take this, and then let's change it to 7. Now we know for a fact that 7 is greater than 5. Let's go ahead and run that. Now we have that number 1 is bigger than number 2. All right, the other comparisons that we can do is the less than or greater than. So let's go and do else if number 1 is less than or equal to number 2. So what this is trying to say is if this was to be number 5, and this is number 5, then this statement would be true because 5 is not exactly less than 5, but it is absolutely equal to. Subsequently, if this was 4, it would still show the same. Likewise, let's go back up to this original if statement. Let's go and change this to 5. So 5 and 5. Subsequently, 5 is not less than 5. It is exactly equal to. So it would skip over that in this case. So if it is equal to, if it is less than or equal to number 2, then we're going to write in print number 1 is, I'm going to say less than or equal to number 2. Now that I have them both as 5, it should show me this print statement when I run it. So this is a really quick rundown of the greater than and the less than signs. So you can imagine that the greater than one would be the exact same, except it would say greater than or equal to number 2. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we would do if the numbers are absolutely equal. Not less than, not greater than, but absolutely equal. So we'll do an else if. We can do number 1 is equal to number 2. Doing this equal is absolutely imperative, because if you don't do the equal, then you very well could assign what is here in the number 2 variable to what is here in the number 1 variable. You just might as well say something along the lines of that, for example. It's very easy to get those mixed up. So make sure you have your double equals here when you're trying to figure out if it's exactly equal. So here we can do number 1 is equal to number 2. And then we can do pretty much the same thing for not equals. And yes, I went ahead and copied and pasted that because the exclamation mark is the original way of saying that something is not equal to, or null in this case. So let's go ahead and run this. Then we're going to see that they are 5 and 5. So it starts at the very top. If it is smaller than number 2, then print. if it's greater than, if it's less than or equal to. So this is the third one, in which if found out that it is indeed less than or equal to. Now we know that 5 and 5 are also equal to each other, but going from top to bottom, it runs into this one first. So this is going to be the first one that it prints. And now that it has done what it needed to do, it is going to completely exit out of our if-else statement, and it's going to terminate the program, even though that this is still true. So that is a good look at comparisons, and we're going to be using the comparisons when we do our guess the number game. So now that we learned about user inputs and about how to do the if statements and also how to do comparisons, let's go ahead and give our user just 3 attempts to get the number correct the first time. So we're going to go ahead and delete all this. And we are going to use something called a while statement. So the first thing that I'm going to do inside of a while statement is I'm going to make a counter variable that is going to start off at 1. So I'm calling this one counter. A lot of people like to just use the letter I for iteration. So iteration number 1. I'm going to use the word counter for this little exercise. So we're going to start the counter at 1, and then we're going to make a while loop. So what I'm going to ask is that while this counter is less than or equal to 10, you saw that earlier in the comparisons, we're going to do while it is less than or equal to, while counter is less than or equal to 10, do something. Once again, pay attention to that indentation, because anything below this with that same indentation is going to be part of this while loop. So what we're looking at is, as this goes along, we're going to increment the counter by 1. So here soon, this is going to be a 2 and a 3 and a 4, all the way up until it is. We're going to continue doing it while it is less than or equal to 10. All right, so let's go ahead, and while it is doing this loop, let's go ahead and print out the counter number. And then once the counter number is done, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take counter, and we are going to want the new counter to equal, what our previous counter is, plus 1. Or another way to do this is to do counter plus equal 1. What that's going to do is going to increment the counter every single time. So the first loop is going to increment the counter by 1, thus making this 2. So it's going to be 2 is less than 10. Going to come down here, increment by 1. It's going to be 3. 3 is less than 10. It's going to continue doing that until it reaches that magic 10 number. Okay, it's got this series of spaces that it does not like. Then let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. So as soon as we run it, it does its countdown. It starts with 1, it goes to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It reaches 10, and then it breaks out, and then it terminates the process. So I'm going to go ahead and come down here. I'm going to write completed down here so we can see that it actually completes the process. There we go. The program is completed after it did its count from 1 to 10 using this while loop. So what we're going to want to do inside the game is when they get it correct, we're going to not let them have their third guess. If they get it correct on the second guess, then game's over. They don't need a third because they already got the answer right. So in this little example, what we're going to do is while it's counting through 10, we're going to go ahead and make it where when it recognizes that it's on its 5th loop, we're going to break out of it. We're not going to let it continue. Once it realizes that the counter is equal to 5 exactly, we're going to break out, even though we've requested for it to do a while loop through 10. So we are going to, while counter is less than 10, print counter. But before the counter actually increments, we are going to hit enter here. Then what we're going to do is an if statement. So we are going to make an if statement inside of this while loop statement. So if the counter is equal to, remember the equal from comparisons, if it is equal to 5, what we want to do is we want to break out of the loop in its entirety. So this keyword is going to let the Python program know that we no longer want to continue for all 10 loops. We want to break out of it right now. So what we should see is it count 1 through 5. And then before it even hits 6, it should say completed. Let's go and run the program, see what we have, in which we have just that, 1 through 5. So in our guess the number game, what we're going to do is say if the answer is correct, we're going to break out. There's no more need for any more guesses. The last little bit that we need to know before we start working on our game is how to get a random number from Python. Because if the number was always 5, the player would catch on very quickly as to what the answer is. They would get it right all the time. That's not very fun. So we're going to make a random number, and to do that, we're going to ask Python to bring in a random number package from its library that we can use. So we're going to go ahead and delete what we have right now, and what I am going to do is I am going to import something called random range, or in this case, range, from the random library. So we're going to type in from random import rand range, just like that. And the way that we use this is that we pick ourselves a variable. I'm going to call it answer. And then we're going to set answer to rand range. And then if you see, it actually has a little tooltip saying how to use it. So what we're going to do is, for right now, just for testing purposes, we're going to open up the parentheses, we're going to write in 10, and we're going to close parentheses. Let's see what that gives us. Go ahead and hit run. Right now it gives us absolutely nothing because we haven't printed anything. So let's go ahead and print the answer to our terminal. Now let's run it. All right, so it gives us a 2. Let's run it a couple times just to get an idea of what numbers we get when we do just a rand range of 10. So we got 9, 8, 4, 9, 9, 9, 6, 5, 0. That's not between 1 and 10. 2, 1, and no matter how many times I click, I never see the number 10. So what is actually happening here is it has given us numbers 0 through 9. That's not exactly what we want. We don't want 0 at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a start and an end number. So let's do 1, 10. Now let's run it. All right, 5, 4, 3, 4, 3, 3. As I click through, I am no longer seeing the number 0. But then again, I'm not seeing the number 10 either. And in our game, we're going to have them guess 1 through 10. So what this is that this is the start number. It is inclusive. It is, greater than or equal to 1. But when it comes to this number, it has to be less than that number, not equal to. So in order to get what we want, we need to ask for it to start at 1 and end before 11. So now we're looking at 1 through 10 using this rand range. Let's go ahead and hit play a couple times, and everything's looking good. Let's see if we can get a number 10. 4, 4, 8, 8, 5, 7, 7, 8, 4, 3, 4. There was a 10. So we are good. It now says 1, but the number before that was 10. So this is exactly what we're going to be using in our guess the number game. Now it's time for the fun part. With no further ado, let's start making our game. So we're going to go ahead and erase what we have here. And then the first line that we're going to want is we're going to want that import line for our random range function. So from random, we're going to import random range. And then let's go ahead and start our function for the play game function. So the way that we're going to have this going is we're going to have the ability to say, do you want to play again? If we go ahead and write our play game inside of this main function, we're going to be able to play it once and then it's game over. But if we make it a function that we can call multiple times, then we can play as many times as we want to. So let's go ahead and create a function by defining it as play game. And then of course we're going to use our colon, and then when we hit enter, once again, there's that indent. So what I'm going to want is the very beginning of the game is going to need to know what the answer is. So let's go ahead and code ourselves a variable for the answer. So we're going to do answer equals, and this answer is going to be that random range that we just worked on. So we're going to do a random range of, remember what we did last time? We did 1 and 11. Very cool. And then this is going to give us what we're looking for, 1 through 10. And then let's say guesses. Let's give them, you know what? 3 guesses. So I think 3 guesses is going to be just fine. And then something else we can do is we have random ranges 1 through 11, which is pretty much 1 through 10 here. But something that we can do is this function also accepts variables as well. So what I'm going to want to do, I want to do a minimum range. I want to call that 1, and then I want to do a max range. I want to call that an 11. So when you want to change the range, all you need to do is find this and just change this to whatever you want. If you wanted to start at 50 and say end at 100 million thousand, you pretty much could. And then here I'm going to go ahead and write in min range, then max range. So even though the words have changed, it is still 1 and 11, just like how we had before. All right, so now that we got that, we're going to do our while loop, in which we're going to do a while loop on how many guesses that they've already taken up. If it's the 3rd guess, then they don't have a 4th guess. Game's over. What we're going to do is a while loop of guesses. So while the number of guesses here while the guesses is not 0. So what does that mean? You start off with 3 guesses. You guess wrong, you go down to 2. You guess 1 wrong, you go down to 1. You guess wrong, you're at 0. So if you're out of all your guesses and there are no more guesses left, then you're going to have a problem. But while the guesses are not 0, so while the guesses are 3, 2, and 1, we're going to do something. When the guesses are 0, we're going to kick you out of the program. So while we still have guesses, while guesses are remaining, we're going to do our guess. We're just creating the variable guess, and we're going to assign that guess to the input that the user guesses. So we're going to do an input of, what is your guess? Question mark. And then we're going to surround that with the open parentheses and close parentheses. Okay. So, even though I have what is your guess, I want it to look a little bit nicer than that because, well, let's go ahead and see. I'm just going to put this down here. Then I'm going to comment that out. And it does have the green squiggly line. There's too many blank lines. I'm not worried about that right now. I just merely want to show what this is going to look like. So let's go ahead and run this. What is your guess? What I wanted to say, I could guess 147,000. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put, what is your guess, 1 through 10. So I'm going to go ahead and hold down Control, hit Z a couple times to go bring everything back in line to where I want it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the parentheses here. I'm going to leave that, and on the outside of these quotation marks, I'm going to put, once again, I need to make this a string because I'm actually going to put the minimum range. Now this is one of the reasons why we did the minimum range up here, so we don't have to do 1 through 10. If you change the minimum range up here, it's going to pick yourself a random number, and then it's also going to populate what the minimum range is here to the user. Then of course, this is going to get really messy really quick. So right before this plus, I'm going to hit enter. So it's going to go down a space. So it'll be easier for you all to see it. So what is your guess? Open parentheses, the minimum range as a string, because you can only concatenate strings. And then I'm going to add the hyphen to show 1 through 10. And then I'm going to do the string of the max range. And then I'm going to add the end question mark. And we're going to get rid of the question mark that's up here. All right, so now that's going to say, what is your guess? Just like it does down here, but now it's going to say 1 through 10. All right, so let's go ahead and do, our, oh, right up here. Okay, so while in line with these guesses, this is where we're going to do our if statement. So if the guess is not if the guess is equal to answer. So if the number that they put in is equal to the answer, then they'll win. But if you remember, the answer is going to be this integer number. But their guess is actually going to come in as a string, much like how this is a string. So we're going to need to actually ask that this is casted, or this is translated as an integer. So if they guessed 7, it would be quotation mark 7 and quotation mark. We don't want that. We just want it to be a strict number so we can actually compare if it is the same as this random range, which is just an integer number. So we're going to have to cast it to an integer. So if it is the same as the guess, we're going to want to say you win. Now, once we realize that the guess is the answer, we print you win, and then we immediately break out of this, which means that if they had 3 guesses and they guessed correctly on the first guess, then we don't care about the other 2 guesses. We're immediately jumping out of it. We jump out of the entire while loop, and then we do whatever is after the while loop. We don't care about any more of the guesses. So this is what break means. We're absolutely breaking out of everything. And then our else if the guess is greater than, oh, my apologies. If the guess is greater than the answer, then we're going to say too high. And we're not going to break out of this one. We're going to continue going down, and later on we're going to increment the counter, the guess counter by, we're going to decrement the guess counter by 1. Okay, and then else. Now what I could do here is I could say else if guess is less than answer. But I really don't need to because we already have equals and greater than. The only thing that's left is less than. So instead of doing an else if, I'm just going to do else because the only thing that is left is less than. So else, let's go ahead and print too low. All right, and then once that's done, we're going to backspace out of that so we are no longer in this if loop. Because if you're incremented off to the right, then you're part of that loop. So we're going to decrement. Then we're going to go to guesses, and we're going to knock that down by 1. So when they get here, if they had 3 to begin with, now they're going to have 2. If they had 2 to begin with, they're going to come down here and be down to 1. All right, and if there are any guesses left, then we're going to print that they still have some guesses left. We're going to say you only have 2 guesses left. You only have 1 guesses left. So we're going to say only, then we're going to say guess. But of course, we're going to want, it is a number that is being put into a print statement that has a string, so it needs to be a string as well. So we're going to cast that to a string. So only 2, let's say 2, let's just put in a number, only 2 guesses left. Okay, and then if there are some guesses left, anything more than 0, if there's 1 guess, 2 guess, 3 guesses left, they do this. But if there are no guesses left, if this is 0, then what we're going to say is game over. All right, so we now have the random from the random range, and then we have our game to be played, which is written in as a function. We're getting our random range anywhere from 1 to 11. They start off with 3 guesses, and if they still have some guesses left, then ask them what is their guess. If they guess correctly, they win, break out of it, no need to continue on. If the guess is too high, tell them it's too high. If it's too low, tell them it's too low. And if they have 3 guesses, knock it down to 2, then knock it down to 1, then knock it down to 0. If they have any guesses left, tell them that they have guesses left and tell them how many. If there are no guesses, game over. Now, that is the function that is going to be called whenever we're ready to play the game. So the game is pretty much set up. Now all we really need to do is to call the game. We need to get the ball rolling. So we're going to hit enter a couple times. And then let's go to make a while loop. So what I want to do is, while the player is still interested in playing, then let's continue the game. Which means I'm going to ask them if they want to play yes or no. So I can very easily ask, do they want to play again down here? But then when they get down here, they'll say yes, they want to play again. They'll play again. And then the game will just exit afterwards. I want to have a while loop while the person is still interested in playing. So if they start my game, I'm under the assumption that they want to play. So I'm going to make a variable up here. And I'm going to call it play. And I'm going to set it to a capital Y. Then, of course, 2 spaces before the function. So there's a lot of nice room there to very easily show where the function starts. So we're going to say that play is naturally yes. So what we're going to do down here is we're going to make a while loop while play is equal to yes. And then, of course, just in case the player decides to just put a lowercase y, I want to go ahead and accept that too. Because the very beginning of the game is a capital Y. At the very end of the game, we're going to ask the player if they want to play. If they're lazy, they'll just say Y instead of capital Y. I want to be able to get it, yes, whether it's capital or lowercase. So, while the play is in the affirmative, while it is yes, we want to do stuff. So let's go ahead and do play game. So this is that calling of the function. This is pretty much what launches the entire game. And then let's go ahead and see what this wants. This wants to have 2 blank lines. So let's go ahead and do that. It has its 2 blank lines. All right, so while the player is interested in playing, let's play the game. And then once the game is done, once the game goes through all 3 guesses, and either they win or they lose, then what we're going to do after that is we're going to ask them if they want to play again. Do you want to play again? This time I'm going to prompt them to say yes or no. Then I'll put a space there. But I want them to be able to change that value of play. If play is continued to be Y, then they want to continue playing. If they want to put in for no, then that means they don't want to play anymore. So we're going to allow the user to modify this input here by doing play equals input. Do you want to play again? So if the user puts yes, then it's going to is going to continue on because play is still going to be yes. But the second that they change it to no, then this is no longer going to be true. Then it's going to do the next thing outside of this while loop, which for us is going to be thank you for playing. That's it. So if they want to play, they can play forever. As long as they continue hitting yes, they can play. The second that this is not a Y, then the game is over. Likewise, if they want to put the letter K, K still isn't the same as Y. So the game is going to be over. All right, so let's go ahead and run it real quick and let's see what we have. Let's hit the run button. And then we're going to see, what is your guess? 1 equals 11 question mark. That's not what we wanted. We wanted 1 through 10. So let's go and scroll up and see where we messed up. So we got this max range, 1 through 10. But the random range requires that this be 11 and not 10. But we want to print out to the user that they can only guess up to 10. So what we're going to do is, let's go ahead and hit this red square up here to stop the program from continuing on. And we're going to say max range -1. That is going to get us the number that we want. And then we totally forgot to put a closed parentheses to be 1 through 11, open and close parentheses with the question mark afterwards. So now we have that, so it should look a lot better. Let's go ahead and run again. Okay, so what is your guess? 1 through 11. Once again, if I type in something right here, it's really close to that question mark. I don't want that. So let me go ahead and hit stop. I'm going to put a space after that question mark. Now let's run. There we go. All right, so we're going to pick the number 5. Too low, only 2 guesses left. What is your guess? I would like there to be a space in between each iteration of the guess. So let's figure out where only 2 guesses left is. There we go. Let's go ahead and put a \n once again to create that gap in between that we learned from earlier. So let's go ahead and stop, and then let's run again. What is your guess? 1 through 5. Let's say 5. Too low. Ah, there's that beautiful gap that I wanted. All right, what is your guess? 3. Too low. Oh, it was already too low to begin with. Okay, well then let's go up. Let's say 7. Too low. Game over. Do you want to play again? That is exactly what we wanted to see. The game over, it came down here, and now we're at, do you want to play again? If I were to hit this capital Y, it would change play to capital Y, in which it would continue doing this loop. While this loop is true, it's going to do this, which is that function that has a while loop inside of it. So in essence, we are doing a while loop with a while loop that also has an if statement. 2 if statements to be exact. So it's a loop and a loop with 2 if statements. So let's go ahead and click yes on here. I'm going to do a lowercase y just to show you that we can. There we go. What's your guess? So here where it says game over, I'd really like there to be a space there. Then I'd really like there to be a space after, when you say yes of do you want to play again. So let's take a look at game over. Over here in the game over, I'm going to put a \n for a new line. And then for do you want to play again, I also want to do another line. So I'm going to do a print. We're going to do \n and just see how that looks and see if it's what we want or not. And this is just going to print that new line and nothing else. So let's go ahead and stop the program. Let's run it again. All right, what's your guess? My guess is 1. I don't really care. I just want to go to the very end to see how it looks. Here we go. Game over. It's got that nice gap. Do you want to play again? Yes. And this has a gap of 1. This has a gap of 2. So something that we've noticed is that this n, it is on a new line because print statement starts on a new line, and then it also adds in a second line. So this is a double gap in essence. But since there's nothing being printed out on this line, I don't really need a new line afterwards. I just pretty much wanted to just return that single line. I just wanted to print that single blank line. So let's do an R instead. We're going to close out of that. We're going to run it again. And once again, I'm just going to pick random numbers because I don't care to win. I just want to see what it looks like at the very end. Game over. Now I got that that one gap, that one blank line. That's exactly what I wanted to do, and this \r helped me do it. Do you want to play again? Yes, I do. Now let's actually try. What is my guess? 5. I like pick. Oh, first time. Do you want to play again? Let's go ahead and select no, see what happens. Thank you for playing. You have made Guess the Number game using Python. Feel free to go back in the code and change a couple things around. Change some of the random numbers. Change the amount of guesses. And send it to your friends and let them play around with it. I'm so glad that I could take you along this ride with us. We got one more thing to do, and I'm absolutely excited with the way this is going. So we'll see y'all next. So there is one last thing that we need to do. I'm going to show you how to run your Guess the Number game in a command prompt. That way it's easier for all your friends and families to play the game without seeing the code. By all means, pull up your code and show them, brag about how you've learned Python. But for those that aren't that interested in code and just want to play the game, then this is going to be a very easy way for them to play that game. So what I'm going to ask you to do is come down to your Windows button, click it once, and even though you don't see a search bar or anything, you can still type in the letters CMD. What this is going to do is it's very quickly going to give you the option to pull up a command prompt. So click that, and then you can get into your command prompt. You can also hold down your Windows button and press the R, and then you can type in command there if you wanted to, or you can actually click through the browse through the Explorer and find command prompt on your own. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to find out where your PyCharm projects are stored. For me, they are stored right here in my user directory, inside of my Windows 10 development directory. When you open up your command prompt, you're already in your user directory, and your PyCharm projects folder usually isn't that far away. If you can't find it, open up your File Explorer, look for it visually, and then you can go back and try to write into the command prompt. But mine is not too far away, so I'm going to change directory, which is CD. I'm going to type in a capital PYC. Slowly starting to type out the word PyCharm, but as I get to the PYC, I'm going to hit Tab. And for me, PyCharm projects populates very quickly. I'm going to hit Enter. And then I'm going to move into my Guess the Number game. So I know that I called it Guess the Number, but I'm going to ask Windows to do a directory search so that way I can verify that I get the name correctly. Once I type in dir, it's going to reaffirm that there is a directory or a folder in there called Guessing Game. I'm going to change directory into my Guessing Game. And I'm just going to type in guess, hit tab, hit enter. All right, now that I'm here, I'm going to do another directory, another dir, another directory search. And I'm going to verify that my .py file is there, in which it is. It's called main.py. I'm going to go ahead and clean up my screen a little bit, and I'm going to do a CLS. It means to clear up the screen. So CLS clears my screen. It brings me back to this, and I'm going to type in PY. What PY does is PY launches Python. Python is going to grab your Python file, and it is going to run it in its own little virtual environment. It's going to show you the display of what your program is doing. This is another way to run it, much like how you would double click an executable file. This is how you execute a Python file. So type in py and then type in your program, which mine is main.py. If you don't exactly remember what it is, you can just type in py space and then hit tab. Just hit tab until you find it. It's going to end in a py extension. Once you're there, hit enter. And now you're off to the races. Here's your guessing game. Let me see. I'm going to guess 5. It's too low. Let me go with 7. Oh, that's also too low. 9. I win. Do I want to play again? Absolutely. All right, I like doing 5. Let's do 5. Too high. 4. Too high. 3. Too high. Game over. Do I want to play again? Not anymore. Thank you for playing. This is a great way to show your friends and family this cool new game that you made in Python. Thank you for joining me in my Python beginner Guess the Number game. There's a lot that we didn't go through in this beginner level course, so keep an eye on my YouTube channel and subscribe so you can be the first one to know when I come out with my intermediate and advanced content. For example, what happens when you guess a letter instead of a number? Those are things that we're going to be going through. So thank you for joining me, and until next time. Keep coding.